This one's kind of curious, but this might be the type of thing that interests some of you degenerates out there. You know who you are. FanDuel right now is allowing bettors to bet that either Georgia or Alabama will win the national championship in this coming season, or you can take the field. So what they're saying is Georgia Bama on one side, the field on the other, and kind of y'all figure it out. The the curious thing is that you are getting even odds for both. So, the field is getting the full value and Alabama Georgia is getting, 50, it's 50-50. And it's a good question because you are essentially saying that to me that Ohio State is winning. You're saying, okay, I'll take even money that Ohio State will beat out Bama and Georgia. And as a bonus, I get everybody else too. I get Texas A&M, I get Clemson, I get USC, I get Michigan and Oklahoma, Wisconsin. I get them all. To me right now, the teams I just mentioned, they're probably not going to beat Georgia and Alabama, and they're probably not going to beat Ohio State, but that's not the point in this one. The point in this one is who are you taking to who do you think will win the national championship and you get everybody else? But if you take Georgia and Bama, of course, you don't get everybody else. You're betting against everybody else. And it's a curious pick. It's a curious wager that you can have if you want it. Now, the only four schools right now that are under plus 1,000 are Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Clemson. I think in the case of Clemson, you're seeing a team that doesn't have much in the way. The only other team in the ACC that is under plus 10,000 is Miami. And the only other team besides that that's under plus 20,000, under plus 20,000 is North Carolina. So those guys aren't, Miami could beat Clemson. North Carolina is not going to beat Clemson. I don't think. I don't even think they play them. So that's a lot of what's going on with Clemson is they have an advantageous schedule and they're a good team. Ohio State, I mean, there's not really anybody that's directly in their path. Okay, the league is pretty good in the Big Ten, but I have to say, after this past bowl season and watching Georgia absolutely throttle Michigan, it's hard to really. I've always viewed Ohio State on another level compared to the rest of their league, a little bit like Clemson. It's hard to really talk about that league the same way anymore. It wasn't great this past year. They had a really good, and um, they had a decent bowl season. Um, 6-4. I've seen worse, but they're good teams. They really had a hard time. And this is just going straight off this thing. Ohio State won. They beat Utah by 3. That was a tight one. Kentucky beat Iowa, who is ranked 15th. Arkansas punked Penn State, which is really not a surprise. Georgia absolutely demolished Michigan. Wake Forest demolished Rutgers. That's bad. Um, and then, Michigan State was probably the best win besides the Rose Bowl with their 10-point win over Pitt. So Purdue did not beat Tennessee. Tennessee beat Purdue, and that was total robbery. And I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. So I think for the Big Ten, it doesn't look like there's a lot in the way of Ohio State. Now, everybody who's watching this will say, well, the SEC was 6-8 in their bowl games, and to which I would say, okay, you know, and the top of the league got the job done. When you look at Georgia and Alabama, when you look at Kentucky and Arkansas, I mean, Georgia and Alabama had to lose a game because they were playing one another. But with, you know, the worst loss on that one was UCF in Florida. Although Texas Tech's destruction of Mississippi State wasn't, too far behind. But anyway, uh, I don't, you know, I think it's a bet that Ohio State wins, and we'll throw in Texas A&M. We'll throw in, um, whoever else, Clemson, Ohio State, Texas. But those teams aren't beating. Texas is not winning the national championship next year. It's very unlikely that anybody, to me, it's unlikely that someone other than the three that I've talked about for such a long time around here, it's unlikely that anyone besides those three is going to win the national championship, which is Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Right now you can get Alabama at plus 200, you can get Georgia at plus 375, and you can get Ohio State at plus 500. Clemson starts getting closer to sucker bet territory with plus 950. But again, if you want to take Clemson and say they're not going to really fight anybody until the postseason, then I think that's a smart understanding of where you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. They don't kick off with Georgia. They're not going to just kind of get knocked out at the beginning. And a lot of their schedule, all of their schedule is backloaded to me. I mean, when you look at, they're going to kill Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is terrible. Furman, Louisiana Tech, a little bit of a tricky game at Wake Forest, but if you can't beat Wake Forest, I don't want to hear about it. NC State is something people are talking about. Hey, prove it to me. Do it 2 years in a row. You didn't even win your division this past year, NC State. Not great. Boston College, Florida State ain't ready for Clemson yet. Syracuse, you're off. You play at Notre Dame. They could beat Clemson, certainly, but they're not in the ACC, and it doesn't prevent them from winning the ACC. Louisville's a disaster. And then you have back-to-back tricky games at the end. Now, they're both at Clemson. Miami, so here come the revamped Canes the week before Thanksgiving, and then the game with Carolina up there in Clemson. I don't know. I mean, Georgia doesn't exactly have the most brutal schedule on earth either. So, but you always know that the Dogs have to close out with Alabama at the end. They also they kick off with Oregon, which is going to be a top 15 team, if not top 10. Most people think top 10. So there's not a lot in Georgia's way either. I mean, I think sometimes we make too much of the Clemson situation. I mean, Georgia's not really facing a bunch of killers. Uh, they're certainly great brand names, but they're not, and they're not opening the season with Clemson and closing it with 2 out of 3 against Alabama, right? I mean that was what last year was. And to me, I would probably side with Georgia Bama. We've seen this 4 times in the last 5 years, and 4 of those 5 games, whatever, they play in championship games constantly. These two. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION down below. You know, Georgia and Alabama have done a great job of separating themselves from the rest of the country, but Ohio State's right there. Ohio State's right there. I think. Urban Meyer's gone. The way that Ohio State got punked by Michigan, though, that's disturbing to me. And every year's a different year. But Georgia and Bama both have a lot coming back and enough coming back that I think that I'd probably take those two in this bet. It's not a perfect bet. It's not an easy bet. That's why it's called a bet. Check out DAWGSTRUCTION down below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the website.